Sunday motion. We just got back home from going out to eat, Olive Garden, catching Sunday plays. Y'all know how I do, baby. Quick correctional officer video, though, man. I go through the comments, and I see a lot of your questions, and I'm all about helping you to try to become as successful of a correctional officer that you can be. You going through the hiring process. You got hired. Congratulations. I love to hear it. I love to see it, but I'm going to go through and try to answer as many of your questions as I can. Those of you that don't know, or you just find in my channel, I've been working as a correctional officer 14 years now. I've worked for 2 different agencies, 3 different prisons. I worked at 1 county jail, 2 different prisons so far in my career. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot. In my career, I'm still going hard on my journey in corrections, So like I said, I'm going to go through answers many of your questions as I can. I get a lot of the same questions, from people. Maybe you just found one of my videos, or maybe you don't know. I got a whole playlist of all my correctional officer videos, categorized in one play. I got probably going over 100 videos talking about anything you could think of when it comes to corrections, the hiring process, going to the academy, what's it like working around inmates, dealing with the work-life balance, how to get motivated to work out when you work night shift, different shifts, you working long hours, what's it like, once you have to respond to an emergency, an inmate fight, staff assault, dealing with suicide, all kind of different topics that I've covered so far. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to cover some of the ones that I keep getting people, they keep asking me, so I'm going to lay it all on the line right here. The first one, a lot of people ask me this, is the difference between the county jail and a state prison. And honestly, it's really no difference outside of the policy and the procedure that however that institution runs. You know what I'm saying? The policy and the procedure. So county jail, versus a state prison, the type of inmates that they have as well. A county jail has mostly pretrial inmates. They haven't been sentenced yet. You got people in there from all the way down to a DUI. They might be getting out in a day or two, all the way up to people that's in there on capital murder charges. They're going through the court process, going back and forth. Prison, most of the inmates, damn near all the inmates in prison have been sentenced. They've been convicted. So they're there at that prison to do their time. That's the basic difference between the county jail and the prison. The policy, how they run. Every institution, every agency does things differently. What you may have been taught at this place, maybe you transfer to another agency, you may not be able to do that there. When I worked at the county jail, some of the self-defense techniques and moves that they taught us in the academy, I can't do where I work at right now. It's not, in the policy and the procedure. So if I was to do that on an inmate and he was to get seriously injured, I could be liable for it. You know what I'm saying? That's the basic difference right there. This is the next question I get a lot of. Do I have to be a certain size or weight to work in corrections? Bro, a lot of y'all dudes that's asking me this, bro, I want y'all to understand this, right? It's a lot of female officers way smaller than you that are correctional officers. They work right next to me. They work the units by themselves. I'm trying to think some of the female officers at the prison I'm at now, some of the smallest ones. We got one, she probably like 5 feet, 5'1", probably 130 pounds, bro. You feel me? A female, and she's an officer. It's another one, she probably about 4, she real short. She about 4'11", maybe like 160 pounds, bro. It's not about the size, bro. It's not about, being big, macho, tough. You know what I'm saying? It's all about how you can use your verbal communication skills, how you can de-escalate the situation. You want to be able to use physical force as a last resort. Y'all, if y'all been following me, y'all know I work out. You can go on my shorts, some of my workout videos. Y'all see me doing some insane stuff in the gym. I've been in the gym 23 years now. You know what I'm saying? But I don't go in there working inside of a prison and try to throw my weight around, try to prove how tough I am. If I can get that inmate to calm down and do what I need him to do without having to resort to physical force, putting hands on the inmate, it's a good day. It's a good day, bro. So don't go into it thinking that you got to be a certain size. You got to be a certain weight. People come in all shapes and sizes, bro. You're going to be good, bro. As long as you got the right mindset for the job, you can keep up with the mental and physical demands of the job, you're going to be good, bro. You're going to be good. Apply. This is the next question I get, bro, a lot. Working as a nurse in corrections. The only difference, as far as working as a nurse versus a CO in corrections is that you dealing with the medical side of things. You're going to be passing out pills to the inmates. You're going to be, monitoring their blood pressure, doing medical stuff with the inmates. But I will tell you this, right? Your job, first and foremost, even as a nurse, you're considered correctional officer first. Where I work at now, all the nurses, doctors, anybody that gets hired into corrections, even outside of being an officer, we go to the same academy. We shoot every year. You got to shoot the firearms and qualify with the firearms. You got to pass all the same tests, so you're expected to be a correctional officer first. So there may come times where you have to work a unit. You have to do correctional officer duties. You may have to help the officer on your unit count the inmates. There's plenty of times where I've worked with the nurse. The nurse is the one helping me, backing me up while I'm doing my count, or sometimes a lot of nurses where I work at, they do a lot of overtime. So they work the units as an officer, it's just a dual role, but you're going to go to the same academy that we go to. You're going to have the same training, that's really the only difference, as far as being a nurse working in corrections. This is the next question I get a lot. What's the medical and physical psychological test like? When you're going through the hiring process, you're going to come in, they're going to do a medical assessment, make sure you're fit, to work corrections. You may go get a blood pressure check. They take your temperature, height, weight, stuff like that. Kind of like when you go to your annual checkup, when you go to the doctors, as far as the psychological test, they're probably going to ask you a series of questions. And basically what they're trying to determine is if you have the right mindset and mental makeup to be a correctional officer, to work in corrections. If you go in there answering the questions, answering something crazy, if an inmate get in my face, I'm going to stab them, something crazy, bro, they probably not going to select you for the job because you don't have the right mental mindset. That's all they're trying to do with the physical psych test. They're just trying to make sure you are the right candidate to come in there and work in correction, because it's not for everybody, bro. When you get the wrong person working in correction, bad things happen. You get dirty staff, you get obsessive force, people that come in there putting their hands on the inmates, body slamming them when they shouldn't be, stuff like that, bro. It's not a good look. This is the next question I get, bro. Work-life balance. How do I balance it out? I never worked night shift. I never worked second shift, the weekends and holidays. How do I do that? I tell people this. The best way to do it right, before you start, what you signed up for, right? So you got to sit your family down, your loved ones. You got a husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, kids, and you got to explain to them, hey, mom or dad, hubby, wifey, I'm going to be on different shifts now. I'm not going to always be home. I might not always be able to, sit down for the Thanksgiving dinner. That's just what comes with the job. It's the nature of it. I'm trying to prepare you for what to expect, especially in the beginning as a rookie. You're not going to have the weekends, the holidays off, depending on where you at. You may not see hardly any for your first 1, 2, 3 years. When I was a rookie, I didn't get the weekends. I might have got them off. Sometimes, I had to work most of the holidays. It just was what it was. I've got a little more time in, so I'm able to get the weekends off. I get some holidays off. I usually get every 4th of July off. This time around in my career, I done built up. I done worked my way up. And then, some agencies, depending on where you at, the schedule might be different. You might have like 7 to 7. You might be off every other weekend. Where I'm at, we just do 5/8, and everything's based off of seniority. What holidays you get off, your days off, where you work, what shift, is all based on how much time you got in. You know what I'm saying? This is the next question I get. A lot of people, they may not have got hired. You went through the hiring process, you didn't get selected. So what should you do? You still want to do the job, you still want the career, but you didn't make it through. I want to tell y'all this, right? I didn't get hired the first time when I went to apply for the BOP, right? I was working at the county jail. I had an interview at USP Hazleton. I remember to this day, I didn't get hired, bro. You know, I made it through. I had a job I worked in college I got fired from, and that was one of disqualifiers for the hiring process. If you got fired from a job within like the last 10 years, it disqualified you. So I was like, man, I was really down. I was like, damn, I really wanted this job, but they was like, hey, you can apply again in a year. So, I stayed at the county jail. I was already working at the county jail. I already had a year in. So I just stayed another year, right? Then once that year expired, where I could reapply, that window opened back up, I reapplied. Boom, I got on the second time around, So if you didn't get hired, right, start calling around, looking for other agencies, other prisons and jails that's in your area. You might not have got hired here, but you can call around and maybe they'll hire you. It may go differently this time, So always keep the faith. Keep hope, stay patient. If you're going through the hiring process and it feel like it's taking forever, you got to hurry up and wait. You got to be patient, bro. Patience is a virtue. Even a prison, they could need you right now, right? They could be so short-staffed, but they still have to go through the certain procedures in the hiring process, make sure all the paperwork is lined up in order for you to get hired aboard, So even a prison that could need you right now, it probably going to take 3 to 6 months. You know what I'm saying? That's the prison that need people bad. Like they like, man, I wish we could hire you right now, but they have to go through the proper channels, the proper procedures in HR, in order to get you in the door. So just hold on, stay patient. You're going to make it. What's some other questions we got right here? Fine. Let's see. The academy, the fitness test, going to the academy. I get a lot of questions about that. I only been to 2 different academies, right? I went through one for the county jail and the other one I went through for the BOP, right? So, the county jail, as far as the physical side of things, I know every morning we had to wake up about 6 a.m. We had to do some jogging, get information, have our PT uniform on. Then we did like some agility tests. And I think we had to do like some push-ups, like a certain amount of push-ups, maybe 30, 40 push-ups. The BOP, you had to do like some obstacle courses. You had to do like a dummy drag, like a 100-pound dummy. You had to drag it back and forth for like a certain amount of times. And I think you had to run, 2 laps around the track in a certain amount of time. Both academies I went through, bro, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, they weren't hard at all, bro. And I'm a former college athlete, play football. I'm in phenomenal shape. And there's plenty people that went through that's in nowhere good a shape as me that passed it, bro. It's people that's, I don't like to talk bad about people, but there's plenty people that are big, out of shape, it is what it is. They pass. So if they could pass it, you could pass it. I tell people this, right? If you're going to go to the academy in a certain amount of time, or you're going to go either when you start, or you're going to be working on the floor, as a probation officer, then they'll send you to the academy in a few months. Ask around wherever facility you work at. Ask people, what's the academy like? What the test consists of when I go out there? What do they expect me to do? That way you got an idea. Now you can start preparing. You got to run a couple laps in a certain amount of time. You can go to the track somewhere, get you a stopwatch, start timing yourself. So that way, when you get out there, you already ready to perform. You already know you're going to pass. You got to do a certain amount of push-ups. Start hitting push-ups today, bro. See how many you can do till you can get to the amount that you need. Don't go out there and you ain't prepared. I've seen plenty of people lose their job because they went to the academy and they thought it was a joke, bro. They didn't pass the physical test. A lot of agencies, that's a condition of your employment. You got to pass the academy successfully, the writing, the test, the shooting, the physical part. You know what I'm saying? And the instructors, you fail one time, the instructors, they pretty reasonable. And they'll give you a couple more opportunities to try to pass it. If you didn't pass the running part, they may let you go back out there the next day and pass. They're not just going to fire you on the spot and send you back home. I've seen people, they didn't pass necessarily the first time around, but the instructor let them go out the next day and they were able to pass. You know what I'm saying? They're going to give you a couple more opportunities, but like I say, man, you got to go to the academy in 6 months. Start today. Don't get out there and you got your livelihood, how you dependent on your paycheck. You know what I'm saying? This, you want to make a career out of this, and you bomb it. You lose your job because you weren't prepared for the academy. What's some other questions I'll be getting? Age limit. You know, I get a lot of questions about this. It all depends on what agency you work for. Every agency is different. Where I'm at, usually the age limit is 37. You got to be 37 or younger to apply. They did do an age waiver. I'm not sure if that's still going on. They made it 40 and under. You know, a lot of state and county jails, you know, I've seen people start working in corrections in their late 50s, 60s. You know, as long as you can keep up with the physical demands and mental demands of the job, you know, you can run, pass all the tests, you're golden. Go ahead and apply, bro. You know, you got to think too. A lot of the top people that work in corrections that got the most time in 25 years, a lot of them are in their 50s and 60s, bro. So, you know what I'm saying? Go ahead and apply. Ain't no limit, bro. Like I said, long as you can keep up with the demands, I say go for it. That's just my personal opinion. What's some other questions? Oh, this is a good one, right? I get this all the time. Do I need special self-defense or like, you know, classes like karate, jujitsu, martial arts in order to be a good correctional officer? This is the thing. They're going to train you on the type of self-defense moves that they want you to be using when you go to the academy. Now, if you want to do that, you know, take a karate class, this and that, hey, be my guest. It can't do nothing but help you, but you got to always remember this, right? If you go in there and the policy says, you know, you got an inmate fighting you, right? And you supposed to take them down a certain way, and you in there doing Bruce Lee karate kicks, man, that inmate gets seriously injured, and that's outside the policy, yo, you on the hook. You on the hook, bro. You liable to get in trouble or get fired. So you got to always remember what they taught you. Like when I worked the county jail, they taught us, you know, when we were defending ourselves against an inmate, we could do knee strikes. You can knee strike. Where I'm at now, they don't teach that, bro. So if I was going there knee striking inmates, I can get in trouble if an inmate got seriously hurt. But hey, like I say, man, do it, bro. Go for it. You know, self-defense. You know, I'm thinking about taking up a boxing class or karate class in the future just to expand my horizons, you know, work on my self-defense. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, when push comes to shove, you got an inmate, you know, on top of you, or you got a combative inmate, he done whooped out a shank or a knife and he ready to stab you. You got to do what you got to do in order to go home. So if that karate could potentially help you, you know, to make it back home safely to your family, I'm here for it, bro. So you just got to be mindful of that when it comes to, you know, the certain techniques. You got a background in martial arts, karate, you know, wrestling. You just got to be mindful of what they teach you, bro, so you don't get hemmed up or get yourself in a situation where you might have body slammed the inmate and he gets seriously hurt, taken to the hospital. Now you liable. They got you in court. This is the last thing I'm going to leave y'all with, bro. Females in corrections. You know, I get a lot of women asking me, should I become a correctional officer? Like I said, it's plenty women that work in corrections where I'm at and all the other facilities that I've worked at in my career, you know, from COs to nurses to contractors to people that work in food service, different departments. It's all plenty women, bro. So if you want to get in as a female officer, I say go for it. Like I said, always be mindful of the inmates, bro. You know, they're going to try to manipulate you. They're going to be staring at you, especially if you're an attractive woman. You know, a new face on the scene. You know, the inmates, some of them been locked up 10, 15, 20 years. They ain't seen no woman, been in a woman's presence, you know, physical relations for like, you know, a decade. So, you know, it's natural. They're going to look at you when you walking across the compound. You know, always remember the policy. Remember the inmates ain't your friends. Don't get jammed up. I see it all the time. Officers, staff members get jammed up. The inmates manipulate them. They get tricked into bringing in contraband, having relationships with the inmates, bro. And it never ends good. It never ends good. They always end up getting fired. And a lot of them end up going to jail doing prison time, bro. I don't know about y'all. I like my job. I like my freedom. And I like to live good. You know, the money's good. I don't have to resort to being a dirty stab to make extra money. There's plenty overtime in a lot of these facilities. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to go get my honey where I get my money. You know, I definitely don't need to do that with no inmates. You know, I'm at a men's prison anyway. But hey, it's different strokes for different folks. I seen a dude at my prison. He went to prison, lost his job. He was messing with a transsexual inmate. You just never know what you're going to get these days, bro. But y'all stay safe. You know, if you're going through the process, man, stay patient. If you've been working corrections with me, like, for a while, man, let's keep going, bro. Let's watch each other's back. Let's keep going. Let's stay safe. Let's stay vigilant, bro. And let's make it home at the end of the day. Y'all like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel at The Ghetto Bodybuilder. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok at The Ghetto Bodybuilder. I got that merchandise for sale. Tap in with me on my website. Copy you some merch. Y'all got any input, thoughts, comments on this video? Make sure you drop a comment. I'll be sure to get back with you as soon as I can. Y'all know how we coming. Let's get motivated.